Silver is a material that we as a society have always attributed value to. It is hardy, durable, something that will last throughout the ages, and it's got unique industrial properties as well. All of these things combined mean that it has value, but it's got a certain level of value, and that value won't necessarily exponentially shoot up unless there is a huge fundamental paradigm shift in the way that we as a society look and invest in silver. Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and a very warm welcome to you all joining me for this week's Precious Metal Ramble, which is going to be all about one of the biggest misconceptions out there about gold and silver, that one day this stuff will be exponentially more valuable, that its value will be somehow reset by whatever calamitous event that happens, whether it be a big financial reset of fiat currencies going back onto a gold standard, or just the increased demand for industrial use, that one day this stuff will be worth exponentially more than it currently is. It is a big misconception. There's a phrase that I like: an ounce of silver is still an ounce of silver. And ultimately what this stuff is valued in comes down to what currencies you use, you get paid in, you pay your bills with, that's in your bank account. And if we see some parabolic movements in silver, it's not necessarily going to be because of a paradigm shift in the way that we as a culture, as a society, give value to silver. It's going to be very much more related to the value of that currency, which will have devalued. So there's a whole host of different things that we want to talk about in today's video. A quick reminder that all of this is just my opinion. It's just the way I think, a little bit of critical thinking, question asking, and it's something you should definitely not use as a basis to make financial decisions. I'd love to know your opinion as we go throughout the video as well, so make sure you comment down below and hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying the video as we go throughout. So the fundamentals of silver is that silver is a precious metal. It's something that holds value over time, and it's something that people put stock in to hold value over time. It has for thousands of years done that very job. The same with gold. It is a unique metal in that it has very good longevity properties. It's not like iron, it won't rust away to nothing. It stays, it's got that longevity, which is really important. It's also really unique for industrial purposes as well. Very, very good for industry. So the idea that, and this is the big misconception, that silver will just one day reset and it will be valued way higher than it currently is. Because let's be honest, even right now at $29 an ounce spot price or $26 an ounce spot price, silver's pretty cheap. You can get hold of an ounce of silver. Pretty much most people around the world would be able to scrape around, I say most people around the world, in westernized, more first world countries. Most people around the world would be able to scrounge together $29, $30 to buy an ounce of silver. So it's not that uncommon to see and to get hold of. It's definitely something that you can get. It's not out of the realms of possibility for everybody. But it is certainly not a get-rich-quick scheme. And even though silver is potentially undervalued, and there's a lot of evidence to say that it potentially is undervalued, it is most certainly not something that is going to immediately correct and go parabolic. And if it does, that is, in my opinion, going to be much more likely and akin to the failure, the structural failure of a particular currency than a collective round the world, oh my goodness, silver's undervalued, let's revalue it at a much higher price. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily grasp, is that it is a globally traded commodity. It's a safe haven asset, but it is also something that you can trade in. It's not something that you can often make a lot of money on, but what it does is preserve the wealth over time. Now, it is a traded commodity globally, which means that you can, of course, trade on it and look to capitalize on the fluctuations in the market, both up and down. And that is something that a lot of people do, both big hedge funds and individuals alike. It's a lot harder to do with physical metal because you've got to factor in a lot of the buying premium and storage fees, postage, admin, extra hassle to actually sell. And that's one of the reasons why dealers don't sell silver or gold essentially at spot price, because they've got their overheads, they've got their business prices and everything to pay. So it's a lot harder of a game to do that with. It is very much about the long-term holding of this asset. And I've always likened the ownership of gold and silver in a physical form to almost like having a little bit of a small house a tiny little house made of one coin that you hold, that you have, and it keeps that value. It grows a little bit over time as well. It's one thing that I think a lot of people always look back on and they say, the price of silver back in the day shows that the currencies that we have now have devalued over time. And that's exactly what silver is for. It is to preserve that wealth. And if you look, cherry picking the numbers is always going to be something that people do. And when you look back throughout history, at different specific points in history, you can find examples both ways to say that silver is currently undervalued and overvalued. But as an average, on the whole, over the greater picture of history, even if you go back 100 years, silver is approximately the same buying power as it was back then. It just is the value of currencies that have changed over time, and that buying power has gone down, which is the thing that most people I think just choose to ignore sometimes. And it's very much about this longer term storage of wealth rather than this quick turnaround win that you are expecting, that you might want to see come out from your silver. So there are different ways of thinking when it comes to the ownership of this metal for investments. But for me, I think one of the most important things is that this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is something to hold for a long time, and for people to understand that it is not going to automatically reset. Now, one of the reasons why we all love silver so much as a society, and gold, is because of their past history, our cultural connections to them. And we're in this sort of paradigm shift at the moment because, of course, fiat currencies are this new way of the world. It's only really in the last 100 years that we've seen this major shift in the world's way of thinking and economies towards non-precious metal-backed currencies, this mythical fiat that's just there, that's printed. And of course, inflation, devaluations of currencies, and the fact that governments around the world will actively target to have a certain amount of inflation because it makes their debts, their borrowing, cost less, or less to repay, I should say. It really is an interesting world that we live in now. And I think if you transported somebody from 200 years ago into this world that we have now, they'd be very confused about it. But why is it gold and silver that hold that value? We're in this new modern era now, and there is so many different avenues of technology that can be out there, maybe that will hold more value in the future. Ultimately, this stuff is a really antiquated thing. It's a physical metal in a digital era, and it's something that people still hold massive stock in. You can also only look at the big companies, even companies, but big countries around the world hoarding and buying and collecting gold into their vaults and to have in there. It's just a metal. It just sits there. It's something that we as a society give value to. Ultimately, this stuff is absolutely no different to plastic or carbon or graphite or whatever other resources are out there. And of course, every resource out there has its own fundamental value, and it's got all of its own industrial demand and purposes. I think another good example is to look at helium. The price of helium will continue to go up over time because we're running out of helium. One day there will not be any helium left if we continue to use it. Just have a quick Google of helium and you'll see the number of the price of helium has gone up and up and up over the past couple of decades because it is running low. Now, I say running low, it's not like we're going to run out tomorrow, but at the same time, the same can be said for silver. It is just a metal. It is just something that sits there and it doesn't necessarily yield anything, and it's just something that we hold stock into. Imagine if our society had evolved in a different way, that we would have given value more to something that's completely innocuous. You see some video games and TV shows and things that have post-apocalyptic worlds where things like bottle caps are the currency of choice. Things that are there, people give value to, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be gold or silver. So for a lot of people who are very anti-fiat, in my mind, fiat currency is almost exactly the same as a piece of gold and silver. It is just something that we all attribute value to. And if you go down to the shops, it's just something that's the common denominator of value for the vast majority of the world. You go down to the shops, you buy stuff with fiat currency. That person then takes that fiat currency and buys what they want to buy with it, and so on and so on. If that was the way the world worked 200 years ago with gold and silver, that was fine. But that's not how the world works now. And that's one of the big fundamental misconceptions I think that's out there, that this stuff is somehow going to automatically recorrect in value, and we're going to see huge growth and massive numbers coming out. I've said time and time again that gold and silver are not get rich quick schemes, they are stay rich quick schemes. An ounce of silver is still an ounce of silver, and yes, you can look back in time and say that compared with, I'm just picking a date out of the top of my head, 1965, a gallon of gas would have cost you however much, a dime, a nickel, or however much it would have done. And now you look at the price of a gallon of gas and you think, goodness me, what a devaluation of currency. But I remember seeing somebody who did a specific maths point at a particular date, I can't remember where it was, but they did it and they actually said that, you know what, an ounce of silver right now buys you approximately the same amount of gas as it did 40 years ago. And of course, the world has changed dramatically in industrial use of gasoline, petrol. I'm saying gas because the vast majority of my US subscribers wouldn't know what I meant if I said petrol, most likely. But the point is, the commodities that we use, the things that we have in our world, they are dictated by fiat currency. But ultimately, an ounce of silver is still an ounce of silver. It will preserve a certain amount of buying power. It will not earn a massive amount additional buying power over time, and that's something really important to remember. So for everybody out there who is sitting back and thinking that they just, with their 20 ounces of silver or 100 ounces of silver, or even if they've got more, even a 1 ounce of silver, thinking that that's going to make a massive difference in the future, is, I think, going to be a little bit surprised when these things don't happen. And who knows where things will go. I think, of course, we're all overly concerned. I say overly concerned, we're genuinely concerned with inflation, with the value of our currencies, the amount of debt that's out there. Am I worried about a complete financial collapse of our currencies, of the pound? No, I don't think that's something that is going to happen. But I do think that the buying power of this stuff will go down over time. So the silver that I hold, the silver that I invest in, the gold that I invest in is basically a hedge. It's basically me saying, I'm going to take a little bit of money out of the system. I'm going to hold it in something that I know that people are going to have value attached to at some point in the future. And I'm going to sit there. I'm going to wait and see what happens. And then if I need to have some money, some currency out of this at the other end, I will know how and where to get it out. And that's the way that I look at silver, is, like I said, a little miniature house or apartment or flat or something, an investment that is sitting there that's holding value, that isn't going to fundamentally go down. Because there's always things that people want in this world. Food, medicine, homes, shelter, and of course money, and the ability to use money. And that's ultimately how I feel about precious metal, and the sort of misconceptions that are out there, I think, can sometimes be a little bit dangerous. The expectations that people have on precious metals can be quite disheartening when things don't go to fruition or don't go to plan. And I do see more and more of that over this last couple of weeks. You see silver took a big drop down a few weeks ago. It's not recovered. It's stayed low. People, moan and blame institutions and governments for conspiracy theories. I get that people are annoyed. I get that people are angry with the world right now. But ultimately, silver is a globally traded commodity. It's not something that any one group of individuals can control and manipulate, even though a lot of people think that there's just a cabal of bankers that sit there and dictate the price. It is a globally traded commodity. It's something that you can't control. And who knows which way it will end up. Left, right, centre, who knows. Now, that's me done for today's rambling. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. It's probably asked more questions than it's answered, but that's one of the reasons I make these videos. I'd love to know what you think, so please feel free to question, to ask anything you want, or to comment down below. And if you are going to do so, please just do so respectfully. Don't just sit there and call me an idiot, otherwise you'll go to Banville. Otherwise, we'll see you down in the comment section for a fun, healthy debate. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and share it around through your own social media. That would be very helpful for everything that we do here on YouTube. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next video. As always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.